Hello there, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing something a little different with this Switzerland series. I usually just upload the raw runs with on-bike audio, but because this was such an amazing trip with some of the best roads I've ever ridden, I thought it would be nice to add some voiceover, give you guys a little extra insight into each ride. I'll tackle each descent on a separate episode. This is the first episode, and it serves kind of as an introduction to the whole trip. If you're a regular here, you most likely have seen the recent film called Pray for Speed, 4 Days in Switzerland. That's the main film that came out of this trip, and it was released alongside the new Pray for Speed kit, which you'll see in some of these descents. Now, I did a similar thing with the first Pray for Speed kit, but that film that went along with it, we filmed in Southern California, and I had a motorcycle following me to film. I had a cameraman and a photographer. Switzerland's a little further afield, so I had to stretch the budget. I went with the smallest crew possible. That meant I was going to be filming extra B-roll. I was also going to be riding. And then I was going to meet up with my good friend and training partner Taylor, who was already going to be in France right next door to where I wanted to film. He was doing the hot route race, which crosses the Alps. And I thought, what a great opportunity to meet up with him there and have him and I film each other. There are very few people that I know that can consistently descend at a similar speed to what I go, so it's not always easy for me to film things like this without a motorbike. Now, we also needed one more person to make this trip work, and my lovely partner Nina was down to help us drive up and down the mountains. I know some people give me a hard time about that, but I'm here to make films. I'm not here to prove to people that I can climb. I love climbing, but I also love making films, and hours of climbing doesn't really cut it for an action sports film. Now, it's not quite as simple as just meeting up and starting to bomb mountains. It's not terribly complex, but it does take a fair amount of planning to make a good film trip. So I like to study maps for weeks or months in advance before I go somewhere. I'd been doing that for a large portion of the year. In the lead up to this trip, I spent days on Google Maps searching for roads, checking in closer detail on satellite maps, cross referencing on Strava, stuff like that, trying to see how I can create a whole trip that cuts down on travel, utilizes the time most efficiently while capturing the best riding possible. Now you might be thinking, hey, I saw the main film, and those are pretty well known descents. They're on the map. That is true, but there are a lot of really great roads in the Alps, and I had hundreds of options to choose from. My short list was pretty long with tons of more obscure descents, but in the end, I chose to cut out travel as much as possible, try to be based in a central location for the whole trip, and film multiple runs a day. And I like to film during the week, Monday to Thursday. The rest of the week gets busier with more people coming out, just doing tourist stuff, sightseeing, and the roads get a little busier, and it's really not great to film then. It's also more dangerous. So that's why the main film is called Pray for Speed, 4 days in Switzerland. Out of a 7 day week, we only had 4 days that were ideal to film. And that's how many days it took us to shoot everything. I've been talking about all this planning like it's some kind of science, but there's one thing you can't plan for, and that is the weather. Wind can cause trouble. It's no fun descending into a huge headwind. Rain is catastrophic. Even if you wanted to risk descending in the rain, which I don't, water on the camera lens ruins the film, and there's no way to avoid that. There's really nothing you can do on a long distance trip like this, but you've got to commit thousands of dollars for plane tickets, accommodation, time off work, etc. And then you just hope like hell that it's blue skies. And man, we were lucky. The forecast did show showers almost every day, and I was pretty stressed out about it. I said if we get 5 descents done, I'd be really happy. We managed to dodge pretty much all the rain, shoot more than I could have hoped for. So back to our travels, and we picked up Taylor on Sunday, headed to Sembrancher, which is not really on the map as a tourist destination, but it is inside Switzerland, just at the base of the Great St. Bernard Pass, which is the first pass that we filmed. We could also see the Verbier from our chalet, which you might know from Tour de France. Well, like I said, there's so many descents to choose from and only 4 days to work with. Taylor and I had to leave after that week, so we were there and I kind of just stuck to the plan. Now, the thing is, the St. Bernard Pass wasn't actually part of the plan until just before I left LA. I had looked at it, but for whatever reasons, it fell through the cracks during planning. But I never stopped looking at maps, and after seeing it again on Street View just before I left, I decided there's no way we can just drive past that and not check it out and try film there. So I booked a last minute accommodation, and this meant that I would lose 1 day of our main accommodation, but that's a cost I was willing to eat because the road looked so good. I'm happy to say absolutely no regrets there. We filmed both sides of the pass, and those are the first descents that will be coming out in this series. So after one night there, we filmed both sides in the morning, and then we took off to Inner Kirchen, which would be our hub for the rest of the trip. Again, not really a town most have heard of for tourism, but a fantastic location for the passes we wanted to ride. This is a list of all the passes we tackled. St. Bernard, both sides. Furka, both sides. Grimsel Pass, we did to the north. Gotthard Pass, we did to the south, which is the side most people know. We did the Tremolo, which is a big cobblestone famous descent and climb with a lot of hairpins. And then we did the Susten Pass, both sides of that, which I hadn't actually heard of before I started researching this, but that actually looked the best to me. I was most excited about that. And then our final pass was the Newfoundland. We did that towards the west, and if you watch the main film, you know that kind of ended in disaster. That's 10 big descents, each one at least 15 minutes of pure high speed descending. And we also happened to film each of those first time down. The most scouting we did was just driving up there on the way up, which, in my opinion, is not really a scout at all. Once you flip it and you're on a bike, it's completely different. Now, I do like to scout descents, and I wasn't against riding any of them more than once, but because we were spoiled for options and we had no shortages of roads to film, we were happy to give them all a go first time. 15-minute descent sounds quick and easy, but in reality, that's 2 hours if everything goes right. You've got to drive there, you've got to get the bikes up, kit sorted, set up the cameras, probably shoot some B-roll along the way, maybe wait for a gap between cars or weather. You got to do the ride, you got to wait for the car, you got to pack up, drive back up, and repeat. I think 2 to 3 descents is really as much as you want to do in a day. Otherwise, you're kind of pushing it, taking chances maybe you shouldn't take. And that's what we managed to do each day. And that's lucky because if the weather turns, you might get nothing for a couple of days. Now, of course, you can always go faster with some extra knowledge and scouting, but we weren't really obsessing about times. We just wanted to see and film as much as possible. And the roads turned out to be really well made and quite predictable. A lot of the high mountain passes have pretty open bends, and then they'll be followed by a hairpin, and then more open, easy bends, and another hairpin and repeat for a lot of them. That makes it easier to keep the speed going at a pretty high rate because you know what's coming up. But then the rare occasion that there is an odd corner you aren't expecting, well, that makes those moments all the more dangerous. I gotta hand it to Nina and Taylor. They really made this trip and films what they are. Taylor is a super soldier of a cyclist. I just point him in the right direction. He goes fast, he goes smooth. Always happy to be on his bike, always down for adventure, never complains. And this was the first time he was going to put the camera on his head and take turns following each other. So, yeah, as you'll see, he just killed it the whole trip, as good as I could have asked for myself. Nina, she was driving a new car in a foreign country up some pretty crazy mountain roads. She had to navigate to meet us at different pickup spots without really having being able to rely on a map or on her phone because we're up in the mountains. And she also got some really great shots on the Super 8 camera of Taylor and I riding together. I hope you guys enjoy this format. The standard raw runs will also be available. And the next episode is the Italian side of the Great St. Bernard Pass. That's our only descent outside of Switzerland. And I think it's one of the best roads I'll ever ride in my life. So be sure to tune in for that one. I'll see you guys there.